Okay, Bury versus Tranmere. This is the sixth game that has been called off now for Bury this season. They've been thrown out the League Cup last week against Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday now get a bye through to the second round, and the situation is bleak. The club is staring down the barrel of extinction. They have just over a day in which to find a solution and get the season underway. They're already starting on minus points. They're a place behind Bolton, who are only 1 point above them on minus 11 because they've had a draw this season. So the bottom two clubs in League One started on minus 12 points for the administration side of things. Bolton going to administration and Bury for going into a CVA. Now, the situation with Bury was actually avoidable if the EFL and FA had actually properly implemented the fit and proper persons test for ownership and the financial fair play rules, and they didn't. They're happy to allow clubs like Chelsea and Man City for years to breach transfer rules on youth players. Happy. But when it comes to financial fair play, they are targeting certain clubs and using them as examples. If they had properly enforced their own rules, Bury would not have got promoted from League 2, which is a shame because it was a feel-good story last season with all the financial difficulties, but they would have been forced to live within their means. And this is a big thing, big and here, Steve Dale would not have been able to buy the club for £1. So if the EFL had properly enforced the FA's rules on fit and proper persons and financial fair play, Bury would not be in this situation. However, they decided not to, and they decided to go over other clubs like Birmingham City, for example, and look at some clubs in the Championship and Premier League, rather than actually properly looking at a whole host of clubs that have overspent and overstretched themselves. And a lot of the anger and frustration felt by football fans, not just Bury fans, but fans across the country, is aimed at the EFL and the FA, and to a certain extent the Premier League as well. There's a lot of anger from football fans aimed at the governing bodies of football in this country. And, whether you agree with the financial fair play rules, which UEFA have said are a joke, they don't work. UEFA's own rule doesn't work, and it has to be applied by the various governing bodies of the domestic nations that make up UEFA. UEFA have basically said, yeah, the rule's flawed, but had it actually been implemented to a point, Bury wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be in this situation. Bury would still be a competitive League 2 side that may or may not have got promoted. We will never know, because that's hindsight. But they wouldn't be in the situation they are now, where they're bust and they're about to get thrown out of the Football League. Now, the last time a club was actually thrown out of the Football League was Accrington back in the 60s, when they were replaced by Oxford United. Clubs have, however, been docked points for financial irregularities. That's not including administrations, but financial irregularities. Boston United comes to mind about 15 years ago. So there is some precedent to docking points and throwing clubs out the league, but it rarely happens. The solution somehow seems to be found always at the last moment. However, other clubs that have been relegated from the Football League via just basically being poor on the pitch, such as Chester City and Hereford United, for example, have actually folded and had to be reformed as brand new clubs. So Bury may have to reform itself and drop out the Football League in order to survive. But the EFL, there's a lot of anger online on various social media platforms aimed at the EFL and at the FA and at the Premier League, because the Premier League money, we were always told when the Premier League was set up that the money would filter down to the lower levels and all levels of the footballing pyramid would be healthy. That is clearly not the case, because I will say this: if you take out the lower floors of a building, it will collapse. Okay? And if football in this country, and in that matter across Europe, is to thrive and be successful and sustain itself, which we are having serious problems doing, the lower levels of the footballing pyramid need to be self-sustaining, because some of the best young talent comes through the lower leagues, and the bigger clubs scout that talent and bring that talent up. If the production on of players shrinks because there's less clubs, the quality on the field will drop, and the amount of money in the game will drop. Now, while the game around the world is as wealthy as it's ever been, the money is finite, and if clubs go bust, like Bury, it has a knock-on effect to the rest of the Football League, to the rest of League One, who, when the fixture list was announced in the summer, would have been planning for a home and away fixture. They would have budgeted for a home and away fixture, and this is why Accrington have come out and said we are 100 grand down already on this year's estimated takings. And for a club like Accrington to lose out on £100,000, that's big money. That can only be made up with a cup run, and a lot of these clubs are looking at league survival, for example. So Bury going out the Football League, well, some will say, oh, it makes it easier for the other teams in the league, less fixtures to worry about. Actually, financially, before the season started, all these clubs would have planned financially for home and away games and how much revenue they would expect to take. And they have to make their budgets on that. So if Bury, and to a certain extent Bolton, if they both fall out the Football League for whatever reason, because Bolton have also not fulfilled all their fixtures so far this season, the knock-on effect will be huge. And some clubs will be hit harder than others. Accrington is a prime example because they're the club on one of possibly the smallest budget in professional football. So there we go. But a lot of the anger is aimed at the EFL, and a lot of the anger is aimed at the FA because they're not properly enforcing their rules. They're cherry picking what clubs to enforce the rules for, and had they properly enforced their rules with Bury, the situation would not have come to pass. The same with Bolton, and I'm going to do a video on Bolton following this one because their manager has just resigned, and they are also in a similar predicament where they've been docked points. There is uncertainty about the future of the club, and they've had a game called off because there are concerns, because most of their squad is basically a youth squad that are also playing full-time youth football as well, about player welfare. And again, the question has to be asked, why are the EFL not doing their job properly? Why are clubs like Bury and Bolton allowed to get into this state? If there are rules in place to prevent it, why are they not being properly enforced? But I'm going to leave that there. There's a lot to discuss, there's a lot of discussion points, but for now, thank you very, very much for watching. There is a video on Bolton coming up, and then we'll discuss the Challenge Cup final. We'll do a little preview, Warrington versus St Helens. That's going to be interesting this Saturday. So for now, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.